This ends now. Brenda Sterling storms into my garage party, her phone already dialing 911. I'm shutting down this illegal operation. I watch our HOA dictator destroy what should be a perfect evening. Just minutes ago, 20 vintage cars gleamed under string lights while neighbors laughed over cold beer and barbecue. Classic rock drifted from my speakers as kids chased fireflies between chrome bumpers. Their parents dropping 20s into my military scholarship fund. Now, dead silence. Every conversation stops. She's marching past my guests in designer heels, shrieking into her phone. Yes, 911. I need police at 402 Maple Drive immediately. 8 years of HOA terrorism has led to this meltdown. She thinks she's finally got me cornered. What our neighborhood Karen doesn't know is that the quiet guest she just brushed past while examining my '67 Mustang is about to make this phone call the biggest mistake of her pathetic existence. Sometimes, karma has a sense of humor. Tell me, what would you do? Drop your location below. Let me back up and explain how we got to this beautiful disaster. I'm Jack Callahan, 45, 20 years Navy, 2 Gulf tours, single dad. And the kind of mechanic who can resurrect dead engines with duct tape and pure stubbornness. After retirement, I bought this corner house specifically for the oversized garage, legally converted it into a restoration workshop where I bring classic American muscle back to life. Every Tuesday morning starts the same way. The smell of WD-40 mixing with fresh coffee, while Police Chief Henderson stops by before his shift. Yeah, that quiet guy Brenda just insulted. That's my buddy from the Veteran Support Group. We bonded over carburetors and community service, shooting the breeze about engines and life over steaming mugs. Meet Brenda Sterling. 52 years of concentrated evil disguised as community standards. Picture your worst HOA nightmare. Then add 8 years of unchecked power and a white BMW with HOA enforcer vanity plates. This woman has turned petty tyranny into performance art. She lives in that gaudy McMansion across the street, surveilling our every move from oversized windows like some deranged suburban spy. The scratch of her acrylic nails on violation notices has become our neighborhood's most terrifying sound. The crunch of her designer heels on my driveway during inspections makes grown men check their fence heights and dogs hide under porches. 3 months ago, she nailed me with a violation for commercial activity. Completely bogus. I have every permit the city requires, all properly filed and prominently displayed. Home business license, zoning approval, fire department clearance, the works. But Brenda's been dropping hints about neighborhood character and keeping out certain types of activities. The discrimination isn't exactly subtle when you decode her HOA speak. She's escalated systematically. Surprise safety inspections, demands for additional permits that don't exist. Complaints to City Council about excessive noise during legal daylight hours. Last month, she tried getting my business license revoked by claiming I was running an unlicensed auto shop. Took 3 meetings with city planning to prove she was lying. Tonight, the chief arrived early, wearing jeans and work boots. Just another car enthusiast blending with the crowd. He's been quietly admiring my Mustang's headers while neighbors drop donations in the scholarship jar, completely incognito. 20 classic cars, perfect weather, kids laughing. A community coming together for a great cause until our HOA terrorist decided to launch her final assault on the wrong veterans charity. Sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of justice, and tonight, Brenda Sterling is about to learn that lesson the hard way. Brenda's first real attack came 2 weeks after my last charity show, and she hit me with the bureaucratic equivalent of shock and awe. Picture this. I'm in my garage at 7 a.m., coffee steaming in the crisp morning air, when my doorbell starts ringing like someone's reporting a house fire. Standing on my porch is some nervous city planning clerk, clutching a manila folder thick enough to stop a bullet. "Mr. Callahan, I need to inform you that we've received multiple complaints about potential zoning violations at this address. We're required to conduct an emergency review of all your permits. Multiple complaints from one person, filed on the same day. All written in that distinctive chicken scratch I'd learned to recognize from monthly HOA violation notices. Brenda had carpet-bombed every department in City Hall. Building and safety, fire marshal, business licensing, code enforcement, even the environmental health department. 47 separate complaints claiming everything from unlicensed commercial activity to hazardous waste storage. She demanded an emergency review of my permits like I was running a cartel instead of helping military kids pay for college. The smell of fresh paperwork and bureaucratic desperation filled my garage as 3 different inspectors combed through my workspace, looking for violations that didn't exist. But here's where Brenda made her first catastrophic mistake. She got sloppy with her harassment pattern. The city planning officer, a genuinely decent guy named Dave Mitchell, pulled me aside after finding everything perfectly code compliant. Look, Jack, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but we've seen this exact pattern before. Same complainant, same format, targeting different homeowners. This makes complaint number 47 from the same address this year. 47 complaints against 8 different neighbors. All minorities, veterans, or anyone who didn't genuflect before Queen Brenda at HOA meetings. Dave quietly slipped me a Freedom of Information Act request form. Might want to see what else she's been filing, he said with a knowing wink. Public records can be very educational. That's when I remembered something my Navy buddy told me about fighting corrupt officials. Always follow the paper trail because entitled people always document their own crimes. I spent the next week becoming a paperwork detective, and what I discovered was absolutely beautiful. Brenda hadn't just been targeting me. She'd been running a systematic harassment campaign against anyone who dared challenge her HOA authority. The Reynolds family got hit for excessive landscaping after questioning her contractor choices. Mike the firefighter got cited for improper vehicle parking after voting against her fee increase. Mrs. Higgins got reported for nuisance animal violations because her cat occasionally wandered into Brenda's flower beds. The pattern was unmistakable. Dissent against HOA royalty meant bureaucratic warfare. But here's what Brenda didn't know about selective enforcement, something I'd learned during my own permit research. When HOA boards only enforce rules against certain residents while ignoring identical violations by their allies, that's textbook discrimination under federal fair housing laws. Document it properly, and you can trigger civil rights investigations that make IRS audits look like friendly visits. I started photographing everything, and the deeper I dug, the more ammunition I found. Brenda's own property had an unpermitted deck addition violating 3 building codes. Her precious BMW regularly blocked fire lanes during HOA meetings. Her landscape lighting exceeded city brightness ordinances by 200%. Meanwhile, Brenda doubled down on crazy. She organized an emergency concerned citizens meeting at the community center, complete with printed flyers featuring apocalyptic warnings about commercial infiltration threatening our neighborhood character. I decided to attend, purely for entertainment value. Picture 25 people crammed into a room designed for 10. While Brenda clicked through a PowerPoint presentation she'd clearly spent weeks perfecting. The title, Preserving Our Community Values, a Call to Action. The evidence. Entirely telephoto surveillance photos of my garage taken from her bedroom window. Full paparazzi documentation. Neighbors carrying beer, kids playing with toy cars, veterans sharing stories on my driveway. She'd been stalking my charity events like she was building a federal drug case. The most beautiful irony. 3 slides featured photos taken at 6 a.m. during Chief Henderson's Tuesday morning coffee visits. Brenda had unknowingly created a surveillance album of herself harassing the police chief, complete with timestamps and license plate close-ups. The community response was the exact opposite of what she expected. Instead of rallying support, Neighbors started sharing their own Brenda horror stories. Mrs. Higgins stood up and announced she'd been documenting Brenda's violations for months. Mike revealed that half the fire department lives in our neighborhood, and they all support my charity work. By meeting's end, Brenda had accidentally created a unified neighborhood resistance against her tyranny. 15 residents signed my petition supporting the monthly car shows, including 3 off-duty officers who'd been quietly enjoying my events. Brenda stormed out, promising decisive action against my flagrant disregard for community standards. She had no idea she'd just handed me everything needed to destroy her credibility completely. Brenda's second attack came exactly 1 week later, and this time she brought what she thought were the big guns. A surprise building inspection orchestrated through her real estate corruption network. I'm enjoying my usual Tuesday morning coffee with Chief Henderson, both of us admiring the progress on my Mustang's engine rebuild. The sweet smell of fresh motor oil mixed with Colombian dark roast creates this perfect masculine sanctuary. When some official-looking guy in a wrinkled, cheap suit marches up my driveway, carrying a clipboard like it's a weapon of mass destruction. Building inspection. I need to examine this structure immediately for code compliance. The timing wasn't coincidental. Brenda had been watching from her McMansion command center, waiting for the perfect moment to humiliate me in front of my police chief buddy. She just didn't know who she was about to humiliate herself in front of. Chief Henderson, still in his civilian clothes, quietly stepped aside to observe while Inspector Derek Vance began his theatrical performance. This guy was clearly doing Brenda a favor, poking around my garage like he was hunting for violations with a magnifying glass and a personal vendetta. "This electrical work looks questionable," Vance announced, examining my professionally installed 240-volt outlets. "These permits seem irregular." That's when Chief Henderson casually walked over, still holding his steaming coffee mug. "Morning, Derek. Interesting inspection technique you've got there." The color drained from Vance's face faster than oil from a blown gasket. Turned out Derek knew exactly who Chief Henderson was, and apparently had some history with the department that made him sweat through his polyester shirt. Suddenly, Vance's inspection became remarkably professional. Every permit was properly filed and displayed. Every electrical connection was expertly installed to code. Every safety measure exceeded requirements. Amazing how quickly corruption evaporates when actual law enforcement is breathing down your neck. But here's where the morning got absolutely beautiful. As Vance packed up his fraudulent inspection, he pulled me aside for what he thought was a private conversation. The desperate scratch of his pen on forms filled the awkward silence as he whispered, "Look, Mr. Callahan, I should probably tell you something. Your HOA president offered me guaranteed referral bonuses if I found violations today. Said her real estate business could send me lots of work if I helped with your problem." Attempted bribery of a city official. Using professional connections for personal vendettas. I could practically hear the real estate licensing board sharpening their disciplinary knives. Chief Henderson overheard every word, and that subtle smile spreading across his face told me he was mentally filing away some very useful information for later. I spent that afternoon diving into real estate ethics research, remembering something my attorney buddy once mentioned about professional licensing accountability. During my Navy days, I'd learned that corrupt officials always leave paper trails. And licensed professionals are especially vulnerable because their livelihoods depend on maintaining clean records. Real estate agents face automatic license review when they leverage business relationships for personal disputes. When agents use their professional connections to harass neighbors, that's immediate grounds for disciplinary action and potential permanent license suspension. These violations stick to your record forever, making future employment in real estate virtually impossible. I filed my ethics complaint that evening, complete with Vance's written statement about Brenda's attempted bribery, professional misconduct, abuse of position, attempted corruption of city officials. Brenda had managed to violate 6 different ethics rules in one spectacular morning. But our neighborhood dictator wasn't finished excavating her own professional grave. 3 days later, Brenda called an emergency HOA board meeting to propose new bylaws that would retroactively ban automotive businesses from residential properties. She'd apparently spent the weekend researching legal loopholes, convinced she could rewrite the rules and force me out permanently. The meeting was pure amateur theater. Brenda had prepared a presentation featuring dramatic charts about property value impacts and community character degradation. She'd even hired a local attorney to explain how the new bylaws would be legally bulletproof and immediately enforceable. What she didn't research: basic HOA governance requirements. I showed up armed with my own legal homework and a folder full of documentation about her selective enforcement patterns. When she called for the vote, I calmly stood up and read directly from our HOA charter. Bylaw modifications require a 2/3 majority vote of all board members, plus 30-day written notice to all residents, plus a mandatory public comment period. Brenda had provided zero notice, gathered no public input, and was attempting to ram through changes targeting one specific homeowner. Even her hired attorney looked like he wanted to crawl under the conference table. The board voted unanimously to table her proposal pending proper legal review and community input. Brenda threatened to sue individual board members who didn't support her vendetta, which pretty much guaranteed she'd alienated her last remaining allies. As the meeting ended, she cornered me in the parking lot, her voice rising to a screech. "This isn't over, Jack. You're going to regret crossing me." 20 feet away, Chief Henderson quietly finished a phone call and started walking toward his car, his smartphone still recording her entire unhinged rant. Sometimes evidence just records itself. Brenda's third attack went full cyber warfare, and watching a 50-something real estate agent try to weaponize social media was like watching your grandmother attempt mixed martial arts. 2 days after her HOA meeting humiliation, Brenda launched what she probably thought was a sophisticated digital campaign. She created a Facebook group called Concerned Citizens of Oak Ridge and began flooding it with manufactured outrage that would make propaganda ministers proud. Her opening salvo: a doctored photo of my garage taken with some kind of fisheye lens that made my modest workshop look like a Boeing assembly plant. The caption read, "Illegal commercial operation threatens our peaceful neighborhood. When will city officials stop this automotive madness?" The acrid smell of desperation practically wafted through my computer screen as Brenda posted fabricated safety complaints. Anonymous neighbor testimonials viviously written by the same unhinged person and increasingly deranged rants about property values collapsing due to my automotive empire of destruction. Within hours, she was creating multiple fake accounts to boost her own posts, commenting on her own content to simulate grassroots outrage. It was simultaneously pathetic and terrifying to watch someone's grip on reality completely slip. But here's where Brenda made her most catastrophic digital miscalculation. She forgot that my 16-year-old daughter Chloe belongs to the generation that practically invented online warfare. While Brenda was busy manufacturing fake crisis content, Chloe had been quietly building a federal case. My kid had been screenshotting every post, saving every comment, documenting timestamps and IP addresses with the methodical precision of a digital forensics expert. She created a harassment evidence portfolio that would make FBI cybercrime investigators weep with professional admiration. "Dad," Chloe said, showing me her laptop screen filled with organized screenshots, "this psycho just committed about 6 different types of cyberbullying that violate federal interstate harassment laws. During my Navy cybersecurity training, we'd learned how online harassment campaigns backfire when targets understand digital evidence preservation. False statements causing financial harm aren't just against platform community standards. They create liability for defamation, business interference, and in some cases, federal cybercrime violations." I created a countergroup called Real Oak Ridge Community and began sharing actual scholarship recipient success stories, photos from our charity events, and testimonials from military families who'd benefited from our fundraising. The contrast was stark. Brenda's manufactured hysteria versus genuine community impact. But our neighborhood dictator couldn't stop herself from escalating to criminal behavior. She filed a false police report, claiming I had threatened her with violence during a confrontation that existed only in her increasingly paranoid imagination. Enter Officer Bennett, one of Chief Henderson's most thorough investigators. He spent an entire afternoon methodically interviewing neighbors about this alleged threat. And what he discovered was a pattern of fabricated complaints that would make any prosecutor's evidence-building phase much easier. Mrs. Higgins showed him security footage from her Ring doorbell, proving Brenda's timeline was physically impossible. Mike provided his own photos, showing Brenda hadn't left her house during the alleged confrontation window. Emily, the nurse practitioner, revealed she'd been treating Brenda for anxiety and paranoid episodes that were escalating rapidly. The scratch of Officer Bennett's pen on his report forms was audible in my kitchen, as he documented each witness statement with professional precision. His official report was a masterpiece of police restraint. No credible evidence supports complainant's allegations. Multiple witnesses contradict reported timeline. Complainant advised regarding consequences of filing false reports. That warning should have been Brenda's reality check. Instead, she launched into full digital meltdown mode. Local Channel 7 picked up our scholarship fund story as a heartwarming feature, interviewing military families whose kids were now in college thanks to our fundraising efforts. Beautiful, positive coverage, showcasing genuine community spirit. Brenda's response to good publicity. She called 911, claiming my illegal activities were creating a public disturbance during the live television interview. The timing was absolutely perfect. News cameras captured patrol officers arriving to investigate a noise complaint about a quiet interview happening in my driveway at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. The sound of confused radio chatter mixed with reporters' questions as officers tried to explain about excessive noise from a conversation happening at normal speaking volume. The footage made Brenda look completely detached from reality. And the news story pivoted from local veteran helps military families to HOA president calls police on charity interview. That evening's coffee chat with Chief Henderson carried a different tone. The clink of ceramic mugs on my workbench sounded unusually serious as he spoke carefully. Jack, my department is documenting an unusual pattern of reports from this neighborhood. Someone's filing complaints that don't match physical evidence. And that's becoming a significant concern for law enforcement resources. He didn't name Brenda directly, but his message was crystal clear. Continued false reports would trigger escalated consequences through neighborhood whispers. Word leaked that Brenda was researching emergency court injunctions and making ominous phone calls about permanent solutions to her Jack problem. The woman was about to go nuclear, and she had no idea the bomb was about to detonate in her own hands. The breakthrough that changed everything came from the most unlikely source. Mrs. Higgins, our neighborhood's retired school treasurer, knocking on my door at 8 a.m. with a manila folder thick as a phone book and the satisfied expression of someone who just cracked the Watergate conspiracy. "Jack, dear, I think you need to see something," she said, settling into my kitchen chair with deliberate precision. The rustle of papers mixed with the morning coffee aroma as she spread documents across my table like a forensic accountant preparing for trial. "I've been reviewing our HOA financial records, and Brenda's been stealing from all of us." Mrs. Higgins had spent 30 years managing school district budgets with military precision, which meant she could detect financial fraud like a shark sensing blood in water. After Brenda's increasingly unhinged meltdowns at recent meetings, she decided to exercise her homeowner right to examine HOA books. What she discovered was a textbook case of systematic embezzlement. "Look at these contractor invoices," she said, arranging papers with the methodical care of someone building an airtight legal case. "Every major repair project for 3 years shows identical patterns: inflated costs, single-source contractors, zero competitive bidding." The numbers painted a damning portrait of organized theft. Tree removal that should cost $1,200 was billed at $2,800. Parking lot resurfacing with market rates of $2.08,000 was invoiced for $15,000. Pool maintenance contracts were double the industry standard for services that were never actually performed. The sweet sound of justice was Mrs. Higgins's pen, tapping against calculator keys as she totaled Brenda's theft with accountant precision. But here's where Brenda's greed made her sloppy. Every inflated contractor was paying consulting fees to her real estate business. Bank statements showed systematic transfers from HOA, maintenance companies to Sterling Estate Solutions that coincided perfectly with major repair projects. $52,000, Mrs. Higgins announced with the satisfaction of someone who'd triple-checked her math. That's exactly how much she's embezzled from neighborhood fees over 3 years. The beautiful irony was overwhelming. While Brenda harassed me about imaginary permit violations, she'd been committing actual felony theft that could trigger federal prosecution under interstate fraud statutes. My Navy financial training had covered fiduciary duty violations and their consequences. HOA board members are legally required to act in homeowners' best interests, and using your position for personal enrichment is a textbook criminal breach. Most states prosecute HOA embezzlement as seriously as corporate fraud, especially involving kickback schemes and falsified documentation. Mrs. Higgins had constructed a prosecutor's dream case. Contracts with no competitive bidding, invoices that didn't match completed work, suspicious emergency repairs coinciding with Brenda's personal financial crises, and bank records showing money transfers that forensic accountants could trace blindfolded. The crown jewel. Brenda's BMW payments were coming directly from her consulting account, meaning she'd been driving around her harassment campaign in a vehicle purchased with stolen neighborhood funds. The beautiful part, Mrs. Higgins said with a grandmother's wicked satisfaction, is that financial transparency requests are every homeowner's legal right. She cannot refuse audit demands without essentially confessing guilt. This discovery completely flipped our power dynamic. I didn't need to defend against Brenda's attacks anymore. She was criminally exposed and desperately vulnerable. Every escalation would draw more attention to financial irregularities that could land her in federal prison. The strategy crystallized instantly. Tonight's charity event would become the perfect public venue for demanding complete HOA financial transparency. With Chief Henderson and fellow officers present for community outreach, plus media covering scholarship, fundraising, Brenda couldn't avoid public accountability. She faced an impossible choice: back down and admit defeat, or escalate and risk exposing criminal activity to law enforcement officers already documenting her harassment patterns. Mrs. Higgins organized the evidence into a professional presentation folder. I'll be announcing the need for immediate HOA audit procedures tonight. Every homeowner deserves to know where their money actually goes. The aroma of fresh coffee mixed with the intoxicating scent of perfect timing. Tonight wasn't just about scholarship fundraising anymore. It was about exposing the real neighborhood criminal. The next 72 hours felt like preparing for the most satisfying military operation of my career. Except, instead of neutralizing enemy combatants, we were setting an elaborate trap for one spectacularly corrupt HOA president. Chief Henderson stopped by Wednesday morning for our usual coffee ritual. But the deliberate way he stirred his mug told me we weren't just discussing carburetors today. Jack, I've been thinking about Saturday's charity event. Given recent neighborhood dynamics, maybe we should boost our community outreach presence. Ensure everything runs smoothly. Translation: he was bringing an army, and Brenda was about to face more law enforcement attention than a mafia wedding. How many officers are we talking about? I asked, barely containing my grin. 6, maybe 7. Plus, I mentioned the event to a couple of city council members interested in community policing initiatives. Oh, and that investigative reporter from Channel 7 wants to do a follow-up piece about veteran scholarship programs. Beautiful. Brenda was about to have her nervous breakdown in front of half the city's leadership with live television coverage. The intoxicating aroma of motor oil and impending justice filled my garage as we coordinated logistics. Chief Henderson would arrive early in his restored 1970 Plymouth Cuda, a gorgeous chunk of American muscle that would establish his presence as a genuine car enthusiast, not just an official babysitter. Chloe threw herself into preparation with the focused intensity she usually saved for dismantling electronics. My daughter had evolved from sweet teenager into a digital warfare specialist, creating QR codes linking to our scholarship fund, HOA financial evidence, and her museum-quality collection of Brenda's online harassment campaigns. "Dad, I've organized everything into prosecution-ready categories," she explained. Laptop screen glowing with meticulously labeled evidence folders, social media harassment, false police reports, attempted bribery, financial embezzlement. This psycho's created a masterclass in federal HOA crime. The rapid-fire clicking of her keyboard mixed with classic rock as she designed poster boards showcasing our charity's community impact. Each display featured QR codes allowing attendees to access Brenda's criminal evidence via phone scans. Mike the firefighter coordinated the car convoy with emergency responder efficiency, organizing 30 classic vehicles from across the county. His network meant we'd have cops, firefighters, paramedics, and dispatchers attending as genuine enthusiasts, not official oversight. Brenda would be surrounded by law enforcement without realizing it. Mrs. Higgins handled catering like the organizational ninja she'd always been. But more importantly, she was weaponizing her financial evidence into a PowerPoint presentation that would make FBI forensic accountants weep with professional admiration. "I've simplified the embezzlement proof into charts any homeowner can understand," she announced over her printer's mechanical symphony. $52,000 stolen through contractor fraud, with bank records showing direct deposits to Brenda's personal accounts. Here's where our planning got deliciously diabolical. We'd learned Brenda's surveillance schedule and deliberately timed setup during her peak window watching hours. She'd witness the preparation, see official vehicles arriving, watch media trucks positioning, and slowly lose what remained of her sanity. Emily, the nurse practitioner, managed guest coordination with medical precision, sending formal invitations to city officials, local media, and every veteran organization within driving distance. Her attention to detail ensured we'd have exact attendance numbers for permit compliance. Brenda couldn't claim we'd violated any regulations. The permits themselves were strategic masterpieces. Written police department approval for street closure, fire department clearance for lighting, city council endorsement for fundraising, environmental health approval for food service. Every document professionally framed and displayed where Brenda couldn't possibly miss them. But the real genius was our information warfare campaign. We'd let carefully crafted rumors leak through neighborhood gossip channels that tonight's event would feature major announcements about community transparency and accountability. Brenda wouldn't resist inserting herself into whatever drama she imagined brewing. Chloe's custom t-shirts reading community transparency with QR codes to HOA financial records were pure evil genius. They looked innocent enough, but functioned as walking advertisements for Brenda's criminal activity. The final coordination meeting happened Friday evening in my garage, surrounded by gleaming chrome and the electric anticipation of justice about to be served. Chief Henderson, Mrs. Higgins, Mike, Emily, and Chloe gathered around my workbench like a military planning committee. Military committees specialized in destroying suburban tyrants. "Remember," Chief Henderson said with professional calm, "we're conducting community outreach and charity support. Whatever else occurs is simply natural consequences of poor decision-making." Mike couldn't suppress his firefighter's grin. "Think she'll actually show up?" "She'll show," I replied, breathing in the sweet mixture of fresh coffee, chrome polish, and perfectly laid plans. Brenda can't resist an audience for her drama. She'll walk right into her own public execution. The beautiful irony. After months of Brenda trying to destroy my charity events, we were using her final attack as the venue for her complete annihilation. Sometimes, karma doesn't just knock. It brings friends and builds a stage. Friday night at 2:47 a.m., my security system erupted like a digital alarm clock from hell. And motion-activated cameras captured Brenda Sterling skulking around my garage, dressed like a suburban ninja. Black yoga pants, tactical flashlight, and a Home Depot toolbox that probably costs more than most people's car payments. I watched from my bedroom window as our neighborhood dictator attempted electrical sabotage with all the technical competence of a toddler performing brain surgery. The soft scrape of wire cutters against metal sounded through my slightly open garage window as she fumbled with my breaker panel, like she was defusing a bomb instead of trying to ruin a charity car show. The delicious irony. Brenda had no clue about my military-grade backup generator system installed after Hurricane Sandy. My Navy training emphasized redundancy in mission-critical systems, and tonight's charity event definitely qualified as essential operations. Her sabotage attempt was so pathetically amateur, I almost felt secondhand embarrassment. Watching a 50-something real estate agent commit felony vandalism while wearing designer athletic wear was like watching your tax accountant attempt Delta Force training. The acrid smell of her expensive perfume lingered in my garage the next morning, mixing with motor oil and the sweet scent of evidence collection as I downloaded security footage that would make prosecutors weep with joy. But Brenda's desperation reached truly spectacular heights when she launched a character assassination campaign that would make political hit squads proud. Saturday morning at 6 a.m. She was speed-dialing neighbors with urgent warnings about my dangerous PTSD episodes and violent veteran behavior. According to Brenda's delusional narrative, I was some unstable war criminal threatening neighborhood children and property values. The harsh ring of Mrs. Higgins's landline interrupted my coffee ritual as she called to relay Brenda's latest psychological warfare attempt. That woman called, claiming you'd been making threatening gestures and talking to yourself in the garage. I told her the only person having conversations with imaginary enemies around here was her and hung up. But Brenda had catastrophically miscalculated our community demographics. Our neighborhood included multiple veterans, active-duty military families, and people who understood the difference between PTSD and someone having a complete psychotic break in real time. The American Legion post down the street issued a formal statement supporting my charity work within hours. The VFW chapter, where I volunteer, sent official representatives to tonight's event. 3 veteran organizations pledged donations specifically because they'd heard about Brenda's anti-military harassment campaign. Her veteran-bashing strategy backfired so spectacularly that she'd accidentally created a patriotic rally effect, tripling our expected attendance and generating media interest in her discrimination against military families. But our unhinged HOA dictator wasn't finished committing federal crimes before lunch. Around noon, she attempted to bribe Building Inspector Derek Vance again. This time with a written proposal offering guaranteed real estate commissions worth $50,000 annually if he found serious safety violations at tonight's event. What Brenda didn't realize, Vance had contacted Chief Henderson about her previous bribery attempt and agreed to wear FBI-quality recording equipment for any future interactions. The mechanical scratch of Vance's pen documenting. Brenda's second corruption attempt was clearly audible on the recording as she outlined her criminal proposition with business meeting precision. "Mrs. Sterling," Vance said into his concealed microphone, "are you asking me to fabricate building violations in exchange for business referrals?" Brenda's response was a federal prosecutor's Christmas morning. "I'm offering a mutually beneficial partnership where you identify legitimate safety concerns at Jack's illegal operation, and my real estate business provides you substantial, ongoing revenue. Everyone benefits except that veteran troublemaker. Attempted bribery, corruption of public officials, conspiracy to file false reports, plus anti-veteran discrimination." Brenda had managed to commit multiple felonies while being recorded by law enforcement during one power lunch. The district attorney opened formal criminal proceedings that afternoon, with Brenda now facing both state and federal charges for her escalating crime spree. The final jewel in Brenda's self-destruction crown was her afternoon phone campaign to every city, Official demanding they cancel tonight's dangerous, illegal gathering. The mayor's office politely noted that legally permitted charity events couldn't be canceled based on one citizen's unfounded hysteria. The fire chief personally endorsed my safety compliance. The police department confirmed they'd provide community outreach support. Brenda's response to official rejection: she called her real estate brokerage's attorney, threatening to sue the city, police department, mayor, Quay, and me personally for enabling dangerous criminal veterans. Her attorney's immediate response was resignation from all representation, citing fundamental disagreements regarding legal strategy and serious concerns about client mental competency. The sound of Brenda's professional world imploding was almost audible as business relationships evaporated, criminal investigations intensified, and her desperate attempts to stop tonight's event only attracted more official scrutiny to her own illegal activities. As evening approached, she stood framed in her window, making frantic phone calls, gesticulating wildly at anyone who'd tolerate her increasingly paranoid conspiracy theories. The woman was about to star in her own public destruction, completely oblivious that she'd already written her conviction with her own criminal evidence. Brenda's final act of desperation came at 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, just 4 hours before our charity event, when she filed an emergency court injunction demanding immediate cancellation of my illegal public gathering that poses imminent danger to community safety. The sound of her designer heels clicking frantically across courthouse marble echoed through the emergency hearing room as she presented what she clearly believed was her nuclear option: a restraining order backed by fabricated safety violations and manufactured emergency claims. Judge Eleanor Thompson, a no-nonsense family court veteran who'd probably seen every variety of suburban crazy, listened with increasing skepticism as Brenda's hastily hired attorney presented a case built entirely on paranoid delusions and vindictive fiction. "Your Honor," Brenda's lawyer began nervously, "my client has documented evidence of unsafe conditions, unpermitted activities, and threats to neighborhood welfare." The evidence was a masterpiece of desperate fabrication. Blurry photos taken from Brenda's bedroom window, printouts of my perfectly legal permits with handwritten notes claiming they were suspicious, and witness statements from neighbors who later denied ever speaking to Brenda about safety concerns. Judge Thompson's response was swift and surgical. "This court finds no credible evidence supporting petitioner's claims. These permits appear properly filed and displayed. The alleged safety violations are not substantiated by any official inspection reports. This appears to be a personal dispute masquerading as a public safety issue." Then came the judicial hammer blow. Furthermore, frivolous use of emergency court procedures wastes taxpayer resources and undermines legitimate safety concerns. "I'm considering sanctions for abuse of court process." Brenda's attorney withdrew his representation immediately after the hearing, leaving her to face the consequences of her legal malpractice alone. But our neighborhood dictator's capacity for self-destruction was apparently limitless. Unable to accept that the legal system wouldn't enable her vendetta, Brenda made the phone call that transformed her from local nuisance into federal criminal. At 4:47 p.m., she dialed 911 and reported a bomb threat at my address. "There's going to be an explosion at 402 Maple Drive." She screamed into the phone, disguising her voice with a handkerchief like she was auditioning for a 1940s gangster movie. "Someone's planted explosive devices in that garage. People are going to die." The response was immediate and overwhelming. FBI bomb squad, ATF investigators, county sheriff tactical units, and half the fire department descended on our neighborhood like a federal task force responding to domestic terrorism. The thunderous roar of helicopter rotors mixed with the mechanical whine of bomb detection robots as my quiet suburban street transformed into a federal crime scene. The acrid smell of diesel exhaust from emergency vehicles filled the evening air while neighbors evacuated their homes under police escort. For exactly 47 minutes, Brenda's false terrorism report shut down 6 square blocks, grounded air traffic, and triggered a multi-agency federal response, costing taxpayers approximately $150,000. But here's where Brenda's plan achieved the exact opposite of her intentions. Instead of canceling our charity event, her bomb threat turned it into a national news story. CNN picked up the story within hours. HOA president files false terror report to stop veterans charity. Fox News ran with Suburban Karen. Calls in fake bomb threat against military fundraiser. Social media exploded with hashtag HOA Brenda hashtags and viral videos of bomb squads clearing a charity car show. The bomb squad cleared my garage in record time, finding nothing more dangerous than car wax and shop tools. The FBI Terrorism Task Force immediately traced the call back to Brenda's landline, where she'd been too panicked to remember caller ID technology. Federal agents arrested Brenda Sterling at 6:23 p.m. in her own driveway, charging her with filing false terrorism reports, abuse of emergency services, and interfering with federal investigations. The mandatory minimum sentence for false terrorism reports: 5 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility. Her real estate brokerage terminated her license immediately upon learning about federal terrorism charges. Her HOA board position became legally void the moment she was arrested for felony crimes against the community she claimed to protect. But the most beautiful irony: her terrorism report had attracted so much national attention that corporate sponsors were calling to support our charity. Military organizations across the country pledged donations. GoFundMe campaigns started spontaneously, raising more money for military scholarships in 6 hours than we'd collected in 6 months. Brenda's attempt to destroy our charity had transformed it into a national cause célèbre. As evening fell and federal investigators finished processing the crime scene, they gave us clearance to proceed with our event. The bomb threat investigation had actually provided better security than we could have arranged ourselves. FBI agents would be monitoring the area all night for follow-up investigation purposes. 250 people showed up instead of our expected 50, including federal agents, state officials, and national media crews covering the story of the HOA president who called in a bomb threat on veterans. Brenda watched from the back of a police cruiser, probably realizing too late that her nuclear option had detonated in her own hands, leaving her facing federal prison while our charity event became the most successful fundraiser in neighborhood history. Sometimes justice doesn't just prevail, it goes viral. By 7 p.m., my driveway looked like a classic car convention crossed with a federal investigation, and it was absolutely glorious. 300 people filled our street, triple our expected attendance. Thanks to Brenda's terrorism stunt going viral. 35 vintage cars gleamed under professional lighting, donated by a local TV station covering our story. The sweet mixture of chrome polish, barbecue smoke, and poetic justice filled the evening air. Chief Henderson pulled up in his restored 1970 Plymouth Cuda precisely at 7:15, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Kids ran between classic bumpers while their parents dropped donations into scholarship jars that were filling faster than slot machines in Vegas. Veterans shared stories, families laughed, and genuine community spirit radiated from every corner of what Brenda had tried to destroy. The irony was perfect. Her bomb threat had provided us with better security than we could have arranged ourselves. FBI agents monitored the perimeter while ATF investigators mingled with attendees, creating the safest charity event in suburban history. Then, at exactly 7:47 p.m., our guest of honor made her dramatic entrance. Brenda Sterling stormed across the street, wielding a bullhorn like some deranged suburban general. Her voice amplified to glass-shattering levels. "This is illegal. Shut it down. Shut it down right now." The crowd fell silent, 300 people turning to witness what would become the most spectacular public meltdown in neighborhood history. She marched through our charity event in designer heels and yoga pants, shrieking into her bullhorn. I called the police. Where are the police? This is an illegal gathering. That's when Chief Henderson calmly removed his vintage car show t-shirt. revealing his official police department uniform underneath. The look on Brenda's face when she realized she was screaming at the police chief himself was worth every month of harassment she'd put us through. Her bullhorn slipped from trembling fingers, clattering on asphalt like a dropped microphone. "Ma'am," Chief Henderson said with professional calm, "I am the police, and this is a legally permitted charity event supporting military families." Brenda's brain visibly short-circuited as she tried to process the reality that her months-long harassment campaign had been targeting the police chief's best friend. "You can't be here. Called you people. This is illegal. I have rights." But the evening's coup de grace came when Mrs. Higgins took the microphone at our donation table. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced with grandmotherly sweetness, "before we continue our wonderful charity event, I'd like to share some important information about HOA financial transparency." The crowd gathered closer as Mrs. Higgins unveiled her poster boards, displaying Brenda's embezzlement evidence with PowerPoint precision. "Our HOA president has systematically stolen $52,000 from neighborhood fees over 3 years through contractor fraud and kickback schemes. Every inflated invoice, every fake emergency repair, every mysterious consulting fits all documented here with bank records showing direct deposits to her personal accounts." Brenda's denial was immediate and hysterical. "Lies, counting errors. That's all lies." But Mrs. Higgins wasn't finished. The beautiful irony is that Brenda's been driving around harassing neighbors in a BMW purchased with embezzled HOA funds. She's literally been committing crimes in a vehicle bought with stolen money. The crowd's reaction was a mixture of outrage and satisfied justice, as 3 years of financial theft were exposed under national media lighting. That's when FBI agent Miller stepped forward, badge clearly visible, carrying official paperwork. "Brenda Sterling, you're under arrest for filing false terrorism reports, attempted corruption of public officials, and conspiracy to interfere with federal investigations." The sound of handcuffs clicking shut mixed with 35 classic car engines revving in celebration as Brenda was led away, while news cameras captured every moment of her public destruction. Chief Henderson took the microphone for the evening's final mic drop moment. "Anyone who files false emergency reports, threatens public safety, or harasses military families will face the full consequences of federal prosecution in my jurisdiction. This community supports our veterans, and that support is non-negotiable." The crowd's cheers were deafening as Brenda disappeared into the back of a federal vehicle, her reign of terror ending exactly where it began, with her calling the police on a charity event, except this time the police were already here. Spontaneous donations poured in as attendees learned about Brenda's attempted destruction of military family fundraising. Corporate sponsors called offering matching contributions. Military organizations pledged ongoing support. By 9 p.m., we'd raised $47,000 for military scholarships, nearly matching the amount Brenda had embezzled from our neighborhood. The HOA board voted unanimously that evening to remove Brenda from all positions and issued a formal public apology for her harassment campaign against veterans. Justice wasn't just served. It was catered, documented, and broadcast nationally with classic car sound effects. 3 months later, our neighborhood had transformed into something none of us could have imagined when Brenda's reign of terror finally ended in federal handcuffs. The immediate aftermath was swift and satisfying. Brenda's real estate license was permanently revoked after the Ethics Board review documented systematic abuse of professional relationships for personal vendettas. Her federal trial for terrorism charges resulted in a 3-year sentence plus $75,000 in restitution to cover emergency response costs. The embezzlement conviction added another 18 months and full repayment of stolen HOA funds. But the real victory wasn't Brenda's destruction. It was what we built from the ashes of her tyranny. The recovered $52,000 in embezzled funds became the foundation for permanent HOA reform. We reduced homeowner fees by 40%, established mandatory monthly financial transparency reports, and created a resident oversight committee that prevents any future board member from wielding unchecked power. Our monthly charity car shows became an official neighborhood tradition, attracting classic car enthusiasts from across the state. What started as my personal fundraising effort evolved into a regional destination that's raised over $200,000 for military family scholarships in the past year. The sweet smell of success mixed with motor oil every first Saturday as our garage became the unofficial community center where neighbors actually talk to each other instead of hiding behind closed doors and HOA complaints. My daughter Chloe received her full scholarship to Michigan Tech's automotive engineering program, along with 3 other military kids whose families benefited from our expanded fundraising. She's studying to become the kind of engineer who designs electric vehicles that still sound like American muscle cars, combining innovation with tradition, just like our neighborhood learned to do. The Oak Ridge Veterans Workshop opened in my expanded garage space, providing free automotive repair services for military families using the recovered HOA funds. Every Tuesday morning, Chief Henderson still stops by for coffee, but now he's joined by other veterans learning basic car maintenance while sharing stories and building genuine community connections. Our story became a case study for HOA reform legislation. I testified before a House subcommittee about the systematic abuse of homeowner association power. And our documentation of Brenda's crimes helped pass federal oversight requirements for HOA financial management. The media attention transformed into lasting positive change. Veterans organizations nationwide use our fundraising model. Military family support networks share our story as inspiration for fighting back against discrimination and harassment. Mrs. Higgins was elected HOA president unanimously, bringing her school treasury experience to create the most transparent community financial management in county history. Mike serves as safety coordinator, ensuring all events meet emergency response standards. Emily manages our scholarship selection process with medical precision fairness. The new HOA operates on radical principles, actual democracy, complete financial transparency, and zero tolerance for harassment or discrimination. Board meetings include coffee and donuts instead of violation notices and threats. Brenda's former McMansion sold quickly to a lovely retired Air Force couple who appreciate classic cars and community barbecues. Their grandchildren play in the same driveway where Brenda used to scheme about destroying neighborhood harmony. The annual Community Transparency Day car show has become our signature event, celebrating open governance and military family support. This year's corporate sponsors include major automotive companies, impressed by our grassroots success story. Chief Henderson announced his retirement next year, planning to spend more time restoring classic cars and volunteering at our workshop. His replacement fully supports our community policing approach that prioritizes genuine service over bureaucratic harassment. Romance even bloomed from the chaos. Emily and I discovered that fighting HOA tyranny together was the perfect foundation for a relationship. We're planning a wedding next spring in the same driveway where Brenda used to plot our destruction. The reception will feature classic cars, military honor guards, and absolutely zero HOA drama. Every morning, I wake up in a neighborhood where people help instead of harass each other, where veterans are honored instead of discriminated against, and where community spirit thrives instead of dying under petty tyranny. Brenda Sterling taught us something valuable. Sometimes the worst people accidentally create the best opportunities for positive change. You know what really gets me? This wasn't about solar panels. This was about a man keeping the last promise he made to his dying wife. Arthur worked 30 years for Midwest Energy, keeping entire cities powered up. But in his own neighborhood, HOA President Pamela Hastings decided his wife Martha's environmental green dream needed her personal approval. Here's a beautiful irony. While Pamela spent 6 months harassing Arthur over unauthorized electrical work, the city was operating their main transformer on Arthur's land with an expired easement. She was demanding they shut down his legal solar panels on property where they themselves were trespassing. That $50 a day fine, the lawyer's fees, and frozen HOA DAWs the man was paying to be terrorized in his home. But Arthur had patience. 30 years of dealing with corporate thieves taught him to document everything and let the suburban criminals hang themselves. When Pamela finally grabbed those bolt cutters and destroyed city infrastructure, she handed him the ultimate evidence of her complete meltdown. 2 minutes from vandalism to handcuffs. Justice served with perfect timing. Drop your HOA nightmare below in the comments. Hit like if homeownership still means something to you, and subscribe for more daily justice stories. Sometimes, one promise can power an entire revolution.